But then what the Air Force pilots are trained to do is a full body isometric contraction to try to maintain head level blood pressure. And anytime you're doing a full body maximal isometric contraction, you run the risk for fatigue. And once you fatigue, you lose that grip on those blood vessels and blood starts to pool. So how can you lengthen the amount of time they can do that? And that's where strength training comes in. Probably more important. Strength training is more important in those aspects than the cardiovascular training.
Primarily, would you focus on legs generally then to prevent it from pulling in the legs, or would you just whole body?
There were a variety of different types of things that we tried. Whole body training really comes down to the specificity of exercise. Trying to emulate exactly what they are doing in that cockpit. They're doing isometric contractions.
So like wall sits and stuff?
So the best way to train for it, isometric contractions.
Yeah.
So we built basically a leg press device where they could isometrically contract against it.
Right.
And we'd be able to measure the amount of force, and they'd come in 3 times a week and train on that. And that proved to be fairly effective.
And did you retest just by putting them into the, what do you call it, the simulators?
Into the centrifuge? Yeah.
And to basically time how long
yeah.
before they pass out.
Yeah, we had a spinning protocol for them where we could look at the duration that they're able to maintain consciousness. It was a lot of fun.
Maybe on your end. I don't know if I'd want to be the test subject on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, and these Air Force pilots, they're a lot like your high performance athletes.
Yeah.
I mean, just you can see it in their eyes the passion they have, the drive they have for it, and you're not going to die running a 100-meter dash, but you can die flying one of those planes.
Yeah,
there's a lot riding on that.
There's a lot riding on that.
So they were incredible. I really liked working with them, and for whatever reason, they were appreciative of what we were doing, and because they could see their improvement over time very easily.
Yeah, I think that's what makes all the difference. When people can see start versus finish the improvement, it's like you got to give it to the guy for helping you out.
Absolutely.
And so you get done at the Air Force Base. You decide to move to Wichita from there, or where'd you go after that?
Well, Wichita wasn't necessarily my first choice. I was interviewing across the country and a variety of different levels of schools, things that were more like my undergrad, which was pure teaching, to larger research institutions, which were very little teaching and all research. Kind of wanted to get the blend of both of those worlds, and Wichita State really presented a very nice opportunity to do that. So I came here in 1998. Been here 21 years now.
Wow. It's a long time.
As I look back, yes. But again, when you're in the middle of it, doesn't seem so
like
long,
that.
Right?
Yeah. So let's go into more of the research side then.
Yeah.
So you love the teaching side. We also love the research side. Can you talk to us about what does the peer-reviewed process and the research process look like?
Well, I'm trying to do this as simply as I can here. So with research, there's good research and there's bad research out there.
Right.
There's some terrible research out there that should never even see the light of day or be published. It might be poorly designed, for example. The results may be questionable. The application of those results may be questionable. So really we need a sort of a line of defense for the stuff that is being done and is trying to get into the scientific literature. Because oftentimes if it's in the scientific literature, it's seen as gospel that, well, it wouldn't be published if it weren't true.
Right.
It's not quite like the internet. Not everything on the internet is true. Hopefully everything in the scientific literature is legitimate.
Right.
But we need to have people who review that work. So we have this peer-reviewed process. So journals are set up to have experts in the field review manuscripts before they are published. And it's through that screening process that we're able to weed out a variety of research studies, or at least keep them out of the leading journals. So there's several different tiers of journals. You go from poor ones to exceptional ones. And you know if something is published, say, in Medicine and Science and Sport and Exercise, which is the American College of Sports Medicine leading journal, or Journal of Applied Physiology, you know that it's solid. You know that it's been done well. There's sadly an increasing number of very poor journals that are out there that will publish nearly anything.
And what do you think is the reason behind that?
Money.
Money.
People have learned that they can make a lot of money off of having a journal.
And how does the money side work to it? Like,
people will call it pay to play.
Okay.
So professors, researchers around the world, it's not just the United States, but around the world, are required to publish to a certain extent. And usually the more you publish, the better you're viewed in the scientific community.
Right.
In some cases, it really doesn't matter where you publish. It's just the fact that you published. So some journals are set up to charge an individual, I've seen as high as $3,500.
So they're charging the professor?
They're charging the professor.
Really?
To publish that paper. Now, they may advertise themselves as peer-reviewed. Usually the peer review process takes 4 to 8 weeks. By the time they send it out to an expert, and that expert reviews that paper and provides feedback. A couple years ago, I submitted a paper to a journal just as an experiment, peer-reviewed journal, and had my feedback returned with an acceptance to that journal for publication within 24 hours.
They must have been really on top of their game.
They must have a whole bunch of in-house peer reviewers.
They're ready to go.
Yes. Once I got that notification, I informed them that I was formally withdrawing the paper and was not going to publish it with them. I just wanted to see how long it would take. So, bottom line there is, their reviewers are not necessarily the best in the field.
Right.
If even in the field at all.
And the way that, can you elaborate on how you review and how that process looks the way it should be done?
So when I accept the assignment to review a paper for a journal, I'll initially read through it just to get an overview of what's going on, but then I go in and specifically start picking it apart. So I go through the introduction, the method, the results, and the discussion. Making sure that in the introduction that they have included the relevant literature that exists, and they've set it up so that, yes, they've identified a gap in the literature and they have a valid purpose for this study. Methodology is extremely important. Are they actually running the correct tests or doing the correct assessments to answer the question that they have?
Right.
Once they get past that, there's the results section. And so how have they actually analyzed their results? Are they using the appropriate statistical methods to identify their findings? Statistics can be a tool. You can manipulate those statistics. I'm not saying you make up numbers, but you use different tests to sort of provide the story that you want to tell.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the story that is actually there.
You're right, yeah.
And then interpreting those results. So then when you get to the discussion section, are they actually looking at those data like somebody should? Are they getting the right interpretation of that information and then applying it in the manner that they should?
Yeah.
So trying to take that big picture, and if it passes my test for that, I'll always recommend that there be changes. There's always ways to improve papers, whether it's just simple grammar and telling the story or trying to provide more explanation. Oftentimes in these papers, for example, somebody says, well, we did an exercise program and this is what we found. But we don't know what the exercise program actually was.
Right, yeah.
So what worth is that information to us? I want to be able to recreate a study. So if you do a study and you publish it, I should be able to run that same study in my laboratory. And if you didn't provide all that information, then I'm at a loss as to how you did what you did.
Right. And the whole point of this is to basically gather of researching and peer review to find what actually does work in the exercise routine.
Yeah.
in exercise programming.
And then to be able to replicate it, whether that's in a research setting or out in the field where you're actually trying to use that program.
Do you find there's frustrations for you personally when it comes to the peer reviewing process and then taking that and applying it in the field?
Yeah, I think there's some disconnect between the scientific part and the application part.
Right.
Where we're really not translating the science into practical use.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult because most scientists think like scientists.
And most trainers think like trainers. Yeah.
And few have the, scientists don't necessarily have the application background. They haven't been out there training people. And the fitness trainers don't necessarily have the research
side
back. So most trainers aren't going to be able to adequately interpret the statistics.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the bottom line? What did you find? What's the take-home message of this study? But they're not going to plow through the entire paper to sort of interpret it. Again, if it's published, it must be true.
Right. Yeah, I found that. I agree with you. I have found that frustrating when it comes to, because I am a trainer. And that's part of the reason why I decided to do the exercise science program, is to get a better understanding of the science side of things. And it is frustrating with some of the peer-reviewed articles to take that literature and apply it, or even feel if that literature is correct or not. And what I mean by that is like, they'll wear weight vests. They'll have 20 people wear a weight vest, and they'll have them work out for like 16 weeks in the weight vest and see if their VO2 max improves compared to a control group or something. Actually, I think this study didn't even have a control group, if I remember right, which was
sad.
That's
a red
right.
flag right
Yeah, that's
there.
a red flag right there. And then they said that their VO2 max did not improve by wearing a weight vest doing the aerobic training. And it's like, as a trainer, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, that could be definitely true because they probably can't, go as fast maybe as they normally would without the vest. But then I have other questions like, well, what about their muscle endurance? Did that improve? Did their stability improve? Did their mile time improve? And for me, it's kind of frustrating because I see it as mile time. They started at 6 minutes, and I want to see a 5:30 mile at the end of 16 weeks. But all I'm seeing when I'm reading it is their VO2 max when there's so many other things that go into their mile time.
Yes.
Yeah.
They could have they may have improved their quarter mile time.
Right.
But it wasn't measured.
Right. Exactly.
I have that challenge. I do a lot with kinesiology tape.
Mm.
Very popular.
It is. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think we're able to actually measure what it does. We don't know how to measure it. What we've been doing with kinesiology tape is utilizing sort of traditional tests of exercise and performance. So maybe we're looking at VO2 max, for example, because you brought that up. But maybe it's not necessarily, that's not the outcome measure we should be looking at. Maybe we should be looking at more blood flow types of things to the active muscle. It's hard. People swear by kinesiology tape. And I think that there's some psychological benefit to it. And maybe there's a small performance improvement to it. And when you take the psychological boost that it has with a small performance, maybe you've got a significant improvement at that point. But simply measuring the performance stuff, we really haven't been able to show that it has this profound effect. But on the other side, it doesn't decrease performance. So most of the reviews, including the ones that we're currently working on, conclude that it's not going to hurt. It may not help.
But someone's going to make money off of it.
Keep wearing it because it looks good.
Yes, it looks good. Yeah.
You look faster with kinesiology tape.
Kind of staying on that subject, what would you do to improve the peer-reviewed process? Because it can be a very lengthy process. You said 4 to 8 weeks, and and even after that, it might still be an invalid study potentially. Or they could find out that information was incorrect 2 years later. So what would you do to kind of make that process either more efficient, more reliable?
I think having studies that are published that can be replicated. So if we've got something that's questionable, I should be able to repeat that study and come up with the same findings. So a paper that's published should have the descriptives within it to replicate exactly that study.
Do some of them not? I felt like that was mandatory. You have to.
No, and again, let's say it's just the exercise program. I need to know what the exercise program was.
Right.